Injustice doesn't always wear a badge, but in Oakwood County, it often did. On a quiet Georgia morning, a black family stopped at a rural diner, expecting only breakfast and silence. Sheriff Cotton and his deputy saw easy targets: a polite man, his wife, and their teenage son, outsiders to be reminded of their place. To them, Darius Samuels was just another name, another face. But they didn't see the Navy SEAL beneath the calm demeanor or the years of elite training honed under fire. When their abuse escalated into confrontation, they didn't realize they had provoked a man trained to survive and to fight back. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The early morning sun painted Georgia's highways in shades of gold as Darius Samuels loaded the last bag into their black SUV. The weekend had been good for all of them. His Aunt Martha's cooking, her stories, and that warm Savannah hospitality had recharged their spirits. "Did you double-check the guest room?" Tasha called from the passenger seat, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed their route home on her phone. "Yes, ma'am," Darius replied with a smile, his voice carrying that gentle authority that came so naturally to him. "And I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, and even under the porch swing, where Malik likes to hide his phone when he's avoiding his AP physics homework." "Dad!" Malik protested from the back seat, looking up from his actual phone. "That was one time. One time too many," Darius chuckled, closing the trunk with a solid thud. He walked around to the driver's side, his movements measured and precise, habits from his military days that had never quite left him. "Your mom and I didn't raise you to hide from challenges." Tasha reached over and squeezed her husband's hand as he settled into the driver's seat. "No, we raised him to face them head-on, just like his father." The engine hummed to life, and they pulled away from Aunt Martha's little blue house with its white trim and overflowing flower boxes. Darius adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of his son's reflection. Malik had grown so much in the past year, not just in height, but in confidence. The boy who once hid his phone to avoid physics was now talking about engineering scholarships. "So," Malik leaned forward between the front seats, "can we talk about what Aunt Martha said about your SEAL training? The part about you swimming with sharks?" Darius kept his eyes on the road, but a small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Your aunt has a way of turning every story into a tall tale. It wasn't sharks. It was just very angry dolphins." "Very angry dolphins." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Now that sounds like a story worth hearing." "Not much to tell," Darius shrugged, but his family knew better. That shrug always preceded one of his best stories. "Come on, Dad," Malik pressed. "You can't just leave us hanging like that." "Well," Darius began, merging onto the highway. "It was during my second phase of training. We were doing long-distance swimming exercises off the coast of San Diego." The story unfolded as the miles rolled by, punctuated by laughter and questions. Darius had a way of telling stories that made even the most intense situations feel like casual adventures. He never bragged about his accomplishments. In fact, most people never knew about his decorated military career unless they absolutely needed to. The morning stretched on, and the conversation drifted from dolphins to Malik's upcoming robotics competition to Tasha's plans for her third-grade class's science fair. The SUV's climate control kept them comfortable, despite the growing Georgia heat outside. "You know what I'm thinking about?" Tasha said, scrolling through her phone. "Breakfast. Real breakfast, not just coffee and granola bars." "I could eat," Malik agreed eagerly. "We passed like 3 Waffle Houses already. How about we try something local?" Darius suggested, his eyes scanning the upcoming exit signs. "Sometimes these little places have the best food." They drove for another 20 minutes, the highway giving way to more rural surroundings. Trees lined the road, their branches creating patterns of light and shadow on the asphalt. Small farms dotted the landscape, and occasional billboards advertised local businesses in fading paint. There, Tasha pointed to a sign. Mamie's Place, next exit. Reviews say they have great biscuits and gravy. Darius nodded, signaling to take the exit. The off-ramp led them down a two-lane road, past a gas station with rusted pumps and a small grocery store with sun-bleached advertisements in the windows. Mamie's Place sat at the end of a gravel parking lot, a white-painted building with blue trim that had seen better days. The parking lot was about half full, mostly pickup trucks, and a few sedans with local county plates. Darius pulled into a spot near the entrance, turning off the engine. The sudden silence was filled with the sound of gravel crunching under tires as another car pulled in behind them. "Well, this looks interesting," Malik said, unbuckling his seatbelt. His voice carried a note of uncertainty that made Darius glance in the rearview mirror again. "Sometimes the best meals come from the most unexpected places," Darius said, his tone casual, but his eyes already taking in every detail of their surroundings, another habit that never quite left him. They stepped out into the humid Georgia air. The smell of bacon and coffee drifted from the diner's open windows, mixing with the scent of pine trees and hot asphalt. A bell jingled as Darius held the door open for his family. The interior of Mamie's Place was like stepping back in time. Red vinyl booths lined the walls, their surfaces cracked and patched in places. A counter with chrome-edged stools stretched along one side, where a few older men in work clothes nursed coffee cups and spoke in low voices. The conversations didn't exactly stop when the Samuels family walked in, but they definitely faltered. Eyes turned their way, some curious, some unwelcoming, some quickly averted. A waitress behind the counter paused mid-pour, coffee pot hovering over a customer's cup. Malik's steps slowed as he took in the room. His eyes moved from face to face, then fixed on something near the kitchen window. There, partially hidden behind a rack of coffee mugs, hung a Confederate flag, its edges yellowed with age and cooking grease. Darius noticed his son's tension, but kept his own expression neutral. He'd seen that flag too many times to count, in too many places to remember. He'd learned long ago that reacting to every provocation only gave power to those who sought to provoke. Tasha's hand found his, squeezing gently. Her touch carried a message they'd shared countless times before. We're here together. We're strong together. The waitress seemed to shake herself out of her surprise and approached them, menus in hand. She was an older woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, her name tag reading Betty. "Welcome to Mamie's," she said, her voice professional, if not particularly warm. "3 for breakfast?" "Yes, ma'am," Darius replied, with the same calm politeness he'd use anywhere else. "A booth would be fine, if you have one available." Betty nodded and led them to a booth near the front window. Malik slid in first, then Tasha, while Darius took the outer seat, his back to the wall. Another old habit that gave him a clear view of the entire diner. The vinyl squeaked under them as they settled in. Betty placed the menus on the table, pulled a pencil from behind her ear, and flipped open her order pad. "Coffee to start?" she asked. "Yes, please," Tasha smiled. "And orange juice for our son." "I'll have coffee too, Mom," Malik said, his voice carrying just a hint of challenge. He was 17 now, after all. "Coffee's fine," Darius nodded, giving his son a small smile. "3 coffees, please." Betty wrote it down and walked away, her shoes making soft sounds on the worn linoleum floor. The conversations around them had mostly resumed, though Darius could still feel occasional glances in their direction. Malik opened his menu, but wasn't really looking at it. His jaw was set in a way that Darius recognized. The same expression he'd worn when he was 8, and kids at school had made comments about his hair. When he was 12, and a teacher had suggested he might be more comfortable in a different math class when he was 15 and a security guard had followed him through a department store. "The biscuits and gravy do look good," Tasha said, her voice deliberately light as she studied her menu. "And look, they have those hash browns you like, Malik, the ones with cheese and jalapenos." "Yeah," Malik replied, but his eyes kept drifting to that flag by the kitchen window. Darius reached across the table and tapped his son's menu gently. "Focus on what's important right now, son. We're hungry, they have food, and your mother's right. Those hash browns do sound good." It was a lesson he taught Malik many times. Choose your battles. Know when to fight and when to simply exist in a space, claiming it through your presence rather than your protest. Sometimes just sitting calmly in a booth, ordering breakfast, and taking up space was its own form of resistance. Betty returned with 3 coffee cups and a pot. She poured carefully, steam rising in the morning light that streamed through the window. "Ready to order?" Before anyone could respond, the bell above the door jingled again. Heavy boots clunked on the floor, accompanied by the subtle creak of leather gear. Darius didn't need to turn around to know who had just walked in. He'd heard that particular combination of sounds too many times before. The diner's atmosphere shifted subtly. Some customers straightened in their seats, while others seemed to shrink slightly. Betty's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the coffee pot. "Morning, Officer McAllister," someone called from the counter. "Morning, folks," a voice replied, followed by more boot steps moving deeper into the diner. Malik's eyes met his father's across the table. Darius gave him a nearly imperceptible nod, a gesture that said, "Stay calm. We're fine. We're just having breakfast." Betty cleared her throat softly. "About those orders?" "Yes," Tasha said, her voice steady and clear. "I'll have the biscuits and gravy with a side of fruit, please." The sound of the boots grew closer as Betty wrote down Tasha's order. Darius could feel his son's leg bouncing slightly under the table, not from fear, but from that particular kind of tension that came from being young, being black, and being watched. "And for you, sir?" Betty turned to Darius, her pencil poised above her pad. The boots stopped somewhere behind their booth. Darius kept his eyes on the menu, his voice carrying the same calm politeness as before. "I'll have the breakfast special. Eggs over easy, and yes, those hash browns with jalapenos sound perfect." The morning sunlight streamed through the diner's windows, casting long shadows across their booth. Betty stood with her order pad, turning to Malik last. Her pencil tapped against the paper impatiently. "And for you, young man?" Her tone was different now, sharper, more clipped than when she'd addressed his parents. Malik straightened in his seat. "The French toast combo, please, with bacon." Betty scribbled the order without comment and walked away, her shoes clicking against the floor. The sound seemed louder now, competing with the low murmur of conversations and the clink of silverware. Malik leaned back, trying to appear relaxed, but his shoulders remained tense. "Well, she's definitely not winning any customer service awards today." "Malik," Tasha warned quietly, though her eyes darted around the diner, taking in the sideways glances and whispered comments from nearby tables. "What?" "I'm just saying what we're all thinking." He picked up his coffee cup, took a sip, and made a face. "And this coffee tastes like it's been sitting here since yesterday." Darius watched his son over the rim of his own cup. "Sometimes coffee is just coffee, son. No need to make it more than that." But it wasn't just the coffee, and they all knew it. A couple in the booth behind them had gone silent, their forks scraping their plates with deliberate focus. 2 men at the counter kept turning around, their eyes lingering a bit too long before swiveling back to their meals. Tasha pulled her purse closer, a habit she'd developed over years of similar situations. Her fingers drummed lightly on the table's surface, and she kept glancing toward the kitchen, perhaps wondering how long their food would take. "So," she said, forcing brightness into her voice, "tell me more about that engineering program you were looking at, Malik. The one in Atlanta?" Malik began to answer, but his words were drowned out by a burst of laughter from the counter. Officer McAllister had settled onto a stool, his utility belt creaking as he leaned forward. He was talking to the cook through the service window, his voice carrying deliberately across the diner. "And then I told him, 'Boy, you better think real careful about your next move.'" More laughter followed. Malik's jaw clenched. Darius reached across the table, his hand covering his son's clenched fist. "That engineering program. Tell us more." Malik took a deep breath, uncurling his fingers. "Yeah, well, they have this amazing robotics lab, and the internship opportunities." A plate clattered loudly as Betty returned, setting their food down with more force than necessary. The biscuits on Tasha's plate slid into the gravy, and some of Malik's syrup sloshed onto the table. "Anything else?" Betty asked, already turning away. "Actually," Tasha spoke up, her voice firm but polite, "could we get some napkins? And maybe some cream for the coffee?" Betty paused, then nodded curtly. She returned a moment later, dropping a stack of napkins on the table without a word. "Thank you," Darius said, maintaining his steady calm. They began eating, trying to focus on their food and each other rather than the atmosphere around them. Malik cut into his French toast, telling them about the 3D printing lab at the university between bites. Tasha asked questions, her voice perhaps a touch too bright, while Darius listened, occasionally glancing around the diner with practiced casualness. The food was actually good, despite everything else. The hash browns were crispy and spicy, just as promised. Tasha's biscuits were fresh and fluffy under the pepper-flecked gravy. Even Malik's French toast was perfectly cooked, golden brown, and dusted with powdered sugar. "Not bad," Malik admitted, managing a genuine smile. "Maybe we should come back tomorrow." "Very funny," Tasha said, but she smiled too, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. A new customer entered the diner, the bell jingling. The man nodded to Officer McAllister, who was still holding court at the counter. "Morning, Brent." "Quiet Sunday?" "So far," McAllister replied, his voice carrying clearly to their booth. "Just keeping an eye on things. You know how it is these days. Can't be too careful." Tasha's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She set it down slowly, her appetite visibly diminishing. Her eyes met Darius's, carrying years of shared understanding about moments like these. Malik stabbed at his remaining French toast. "Mom, you okay? You've barely touched your food." "I'm fine, baby," she said, picking up her fork again. "Just taking my time." The diner had grown quieter, conversations dropping to murmurs. The sound of Officer McAllister's voice seemed to fill the space, each word landing like a stone in still water. "You know what I always say," McAllister continued, swiveling on his stool to face the diner at large. "A uniform means something in this town. Demands respect." A few customers nodded in agreement. Others suddenly became very interested in their meals. The cook had disappeared from the service window. Darius cut his eggs with precise movements, his posture unchanged, but his eyes never stopped moving, tracking every shift in the room, every meaningful glance, every subtle movement. He'd learned long ago that situations like these could turn in an instant. "Dad," Malik said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Finish your breakfast, son," Darius replied, his voice low but firm. "We have every right to be here." Betty appeared with the coffee pot, refilling cups around the diner. She moved quickly, efficiently, not making eye contact with anyone. When she reached their table, her hands shook slightly, sloshing a few drops onto the tablecloth. "Sorry," she muttered, the first hint of something other than curtness in her voice. Was it fear? Shame? She hurried away before anyone could respond. Tasha dabbed at the coffee drops with a napkin, her movements controlled, but her fingers trembling slightly. She'd been through enough similar situations to recognize the signs, to feel the weight of what might come next. At the counter, Officer McAllister finally turned fully in their direction. His eyes moved over their family with deliberate slowness, lingering on each of them in turn. His lips curled into a smirk that never reached his eyes. "Well, well," he said, just loud enough to carry. "Looks like we've got ourselves some visitors." The diner seemed to hold its breath. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even the sizzle from the grill seemed to quiet. Darius continued eating, each movement measured and calm. Beside him, Tasha straightened her spine, her chin lifting slightly. Malik looked between his parents, trying to mirror his father's composure, but unable to completely hide the anger flickering in his eyes. McAllister's smirk widened as he watched their reactions, or lack thereof. He turned back to the counter, but his posture made it clear he wasn't done. His hand rested casually on his utility belt, fingers drumming near his holster. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, but the warmth seemed to have gone out of it. The good food turned tasteless in their mouths. The coffee grew cold in their cups. And still, they sat with dignity, finishing their breakfast as if nothing was wrong, as if the weight of what was coming wasn't settling over their table like a heavy shadow. Officer McAllister pushed away from the counter, adjusting his belt with practiced showmanship. His boots clicked against the linoleum as he approached their table, each step deliberate and unhurried. The diner's background noise faded to whispers and the soft clink of silverware. "Morning, folks," McAllister said, positioning himself at the end of their booth. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just doing my regular Sunday check-in. Making sure everyone's having a pleasant breakfast." Darius nodded once, polite, but reserved. "Everything's fine, officer. Thank you." McAllister's gaze settled on Malik, who was working to keep his expression neutral. "Haven't seen you around here before. You boys passing through?" "On our way home from visiting family," Tasha answered, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "Is that right?" McAllister pulled out his notepad, though he didn't write anything down. "Interesting timing. We had some trouble at the convenience store down the road last night. Young man about your age." He gestured toward Malik with his pen. "You look like you might match the description." Malik's fork clattered against his plate. "I was with my family all weekend." "Son," Darius said quietly, a gentle warning in his tone. McAllister's smile widened. "How old are you, boy?" 17, Malik answered, his voice tight. 17, McAllister repeated, drawing out the word. "Got any ID on you?" Tasha's hand found Malik's under the table. "He's a minor, officer, and he's with his parents." "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job." McAllister's voice took on an edge of authority. "When there's been a crime reported, we have to follow up on all leads." "What exactly was stolen?" Darius asked calmly, meeting McAllister's gaze. McAllister shifted his weight, his hand still resting near his holster. "That's police business. But since you're asking so many questions, maybe you wouldn't mind showing me some identification." "All of you?" The other diners had abandoned any pretense of eating, watching the scene unfold. Betty stood frozen by the coffee maker, pot suspended mid-pour. The cook had reappeared in the service window, his face tight with concern. Darius reached slowly for his wallet, his movements deliberate and visible. He pulled out his driver's license and placed it on the table. Tasha did the same, her fingers trembling slightly as she set her ID next to her husband's. McAllister picked up both licenses, studying them longer than necessary. "Samuel's family from Atlanta, huh? Long way from home." "As my wife mentioned," Darius said, his voice remaining level. "We're returning from visiting relatives." McAllister handed back their IDs, but his attention remained fixed on Malik. "Stand up for me, son." "Excuse me?" Malik's voice cracked slightly. "I said stand up. Need to make sure you're not carrying anything dangerous." Tasha's grip on Malik's hand tightened. "This is harassment. You have no probable cause." "Ma'am," McAllister cut her off, his tone hardening, "I'd advise you not to interfere with police business. Your boy matches a description, and I have reasonable suspicion. That's all the cause I need." The diner had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen sounds had ceased. The morning sun through the windows cast long shadows across the floor, and the Confederate flag near the kitchen seemed to loom larger in the tense atmosphere. "Officer," Darius spoke, his words measured and clear. "My son has done nothing wrong. We're simply trying to have breakfast as a family." McAllister's face flushed slightly. "Sir, if you continue to obstruct my investigation—" "I'm not obstructing anything," Darius interrupted, still calm but with steel beneath his words. "I'm informing you that your current actions are inappropriate and potentially illegal." A muscle twitched in McAllister's jaw. He straightened to his full height, trying to loom over the table. "Boy, stand up. Now." "That's an order." Malik looked at his father, uncertainty and fear mixing with anger in his eyes. Darius gave him a small nod, his expression conveying volumes of unspoken guidance. Slowly, Malik began to slide out of the booth. Tasha's hand fell away from his, and she pressed her lips together to keep from protesting further. "Officer McAllister," Darius said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the silent diner. "I'm warning you professionally and respectfully. Back off." McAllister's face darkened. "Are you threatening an officer of the law?" "No," Darius replied. "I'm advising you to reconsider your current course of action." Malik had barely gotten to his feet when McAllister's hand shot out, grabbing his upper arm. Malik flinched at the contact, his body going rigid. The entire diner seemed to freeze in that moment. Betty's coffee pot hung suspended over a cup, dark liquid dripping slowly onto the counter. A fork clattered somewhere in the silence. The cook gripped the edge of the service window, knuckles white. Darius hadn't moved, but something had changed in his posture. The calm was still there, but now it felt different. Like the stillness before a storm, like a coiled spring waiting to release. Tasha's hands were flat on the table, her wedding ring catching the morning light. Her eyes moved between her son and her husband, years of experience telling her that everything was about to change. McAllister's fingers dug into Malik's arm, but the officer's confidence seemed to waver as he registered the shift in the atmosphere. His other hand stayed near his holster, but there was a new uncertainty in his stance. Malik stood perfectly still, his father's lessons running through his mind. Stay calm. Don't react. Let them make the first mistake. His heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady, just like Darius had taught him. The sun continued to stream through the windows, casting stark shadows across the scene. The Confederate flag hung limp and silent, a witness to what was unfolding. Time seemed to stretch like pulled taffy, each second extending into an eternity of held breath and racing hearts. No one in the diner moved. No one spoke. They all waited, watching, as the morning air grew thick with tension, and the weight of what would happen next pressed down on them all like a physical force. McAllister's fingers tightened on Malik's arm, but his eyes were locked on Darius now, perhaps finally sensing that he had made a grave miscalculation. But pride and anger kept his hand where it was, even as doubt began to creep into his expression. The moment balanced on a knife's edge, ready to tip one way or the other. And still, they all waited, frozen in this tableau of power and resistance, of authority and dignity, of right and wrong. What happened next occurred so quickly, that most of the diner's patrons would later struggle to describe it in detail. But those few seconds would replay in their minds for years to come, like a scene from a movie played in slow motion. Darius moved with the fluid grace of a dancer and the precision of a surgeon. One moment he was seated in the booth, and the next he was standing, his movement so smooth it seemed almost casual. But there was nothing casual about what followed. His left hand caught McAllister's wrist, the one gripping Malik's arm, and applied pressure to a specific point that made the officer's fingers spring open involuntarily. Simultaneously, his right hand swept up in a controlled arc, catching McAllister's gun hand before it could reach the holster. The motion continued in one seamless flow, twisting the officer's arm behind his back at an angle that offered no resistance but complete control. McAllister's eyes widened in shock as he found himself being guided inexorably downward. There was no violence, no sudden jerking or painful wrenching, just the inevitable result of perfectly applied leverage and momentum. The officer's knees buckled, and he descended to the floor as if he'd decided to kneel of his own accord. Malik stepped back, rubbing his arm where McAllister's fingers had dug in. Tasha remained seated, her expression a mixture of concern and grim satisfaction. She'd seen this side of her husband before, though rarely in public. "Stay still," Darius said quietly to McAllister, maintaining the hold with minimal pressure. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will maintain this position until you calm down." The other diners sat in stunned silence. Someone's phone made the distinctive sound of a video recording starting. Betty, the waitress, had her hand pressed to her mouth. The coffee pot finally set down on the counter, dark liquid still pooling around its base. McAllister tried to struggle, but each movement only made the hold more secure. His face reddened, more from embarrassment than exertion. "This is assault on a police officer," he sputtered. "You're going to prison for this." "No," Darius replied calmly. "This is a trained professional preventing you from violating my son's civil rights. I haven't hurt you, and I won't, unless you force me to." A younger patron at the counter, who had been recording the scene on his phone, whispered to his companion, "That's some special forces stuff right there. Look at that wrist control. That's not regular self-defense." He was right. The technique Darius employed was a specialized combination of Krav Maga and military close-quarters combat, specifically designed to neutralize armed opponents without causing injury. It was a technique taught only to elite units, requiring hundreds of hours of practice to master. The hold itself was a thing of beauty to those who understood such matters. Darius's fingers pressed precisely on nerve clusters that sent confusion to McAllister's muscles. His positioning eliminated any possibility of the officer reaching his weapons or regaining control. It was the kind of technique that looked simple, but contained layers of tactical sophistication. "Sir," called a voice from near the door, "I'm a retired Marine, and I've got your back if you need it." An older man in a flannel shirt had stood up, reading the situation clearly. Darius nodded in acknowledgement, but maintained his focus on McAllister. "I appreciate that, but this situation is under control." More phones had come out now, recording the scene from various angles. The morning sun through the windows illuminated the tableau like a spotlight. The calm, composed black man in civilian clothes standing over the red-faced police officer. Power dynamics reversed, but violence carefully avoided. In the distance, sirens began to wail. McAllister's lips curved into a savage smile, despite his compromised position. "That's backup coming," he snarled. "You're done now, boy. You and your whole family are going away for a long time." Darius maintained the hold for 2 more seconds, then released McAllister with the same controlled precision he'd used to subdue him. He stepped back, raising both hands in a clear gesture of compliance. The officer scrambled to his feet, reaching for his holster with shaking hands. but something had fallen from Darius's pocket during the brief confrontation. His ID wallet lay open on the floor, its contents clearly visible to everyone nearby. A silver badge caught the morning light, and below it, several rows of colorful ribbons were clearly visible. An elderly man who had been sitting nearest to the scene bent down to look at it, his eyes widening. His voice quavered as he read aloud, "United States Navy SEAL, Silver Star recipient, Combat Action Ribbon, Bronze Star with Valor Device." He looked up at Darius with newfound understanding. "Son, you're a decorated Navy SEAL." The diner erupted in murmurs. McAllister's face, which had been red with anger, suddenly paled. The sirens grew louder, but now they seemed to carry a different meaning, like the approaching sound of consequences, though perhaps not for whom the officer had intended. The cook in the kitchen window let out a low whistle. Betty, still frozen by the counter, looked like she might faint. The retired Marine by the door stood a little straighter, offering a subtle nod of respect. Malik and Tasha remained perfectly still, their faces masks of controlled emotion. They'd been through similar situations before, knew the drill. Stay calm, let Darius handle it. Document everything. Malik's phone was out now, too, recording steadily. More details of Darius's credentials became visible as the ID wallet lay open on the floor. Photographs from deployment, additional commendations, security clearance cards. Each item told part of a story that McAllister was just beginning to understand. The story of exactly whom he had chosen to harass that morning. The sirens were very close now, their wail filling the diner with red and blue light that strobed through the windows. McAllister's hand still hovered near his holster, but the confidence had drained from his stance. His eyes darted between Darius's raised hands and the ID on the floor, as if trying to reconcile the boy he'd been threatening with the highly decorated warrior standing before him. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, highlighting dust motes in the air that danced like nervous energy given form. The Confederate flag hung forgotten now, its implied threat diminished by the reality of true strength and discipline on display. Every phone in the diner remained raised, recording. Every eye remained fixed on the scene. Every breath seemed held, waiting to see what would happen when those approaching sirens finally arrived. The next few moments would determine much, but one thing was already clear. McAllister's morning had not gone according to plan. The backup officers burst through the diner's doors, weapons drawn. The peaceful morning shattered completely as they shouted commands, forcing everyone to back away from McAllister and Darius. "On your knees! Hands behind your head!" an officer yelled, his gun trained on Darius. Darius complied smoothly, his movements deliberate and calm. He'd been in worse situations, faced deadlier threats. This was familiar territory, though the injustice of it burned in his gut. "Wait!" The elderly man who had read Darius's credentials scrambled forward, ID wallet in hand. "Officers, there's been a mistake. This man is a decorated Navy SEAL." McAllister snatched the wallet and shoved it into his pocket. "This thug assaulted a police officer," he announced, voice pitched to Carrie. "He's under arrest." Tasha stood up, her teacher's authority ringing in her voice. "That's a lie. Officer McAllister was harassing our son." "My husband only." "Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested too," McAllister snapped, color returning to his face as he regained control of the situation. "Mom, they can't do this!" Malik started forward, but Tasha grabbed his arm, holding him back. Her fingers dug into his sleeve as she fought to keep him safe, to keep him from giving them an excuse. The other diners had their phones up, still recording. The retired Marine by the door looked ready to intervene, but Darius caught his eye and gave a slight shake of his head. More violence wouldn't help anyone. "Cuff him!" McAllister ordered, and two officers moved in. The steel bracelets clicked shut around Darius's wrists, cold and final. Betty, the waitress, found her voice at last. "This ain't right," she said softly, but not softly enough. McAllister wheeled on her. "You got something to say? Maybe you'd like to join him." The cook ducked down behind the kitchen window, and Betty retreated, shaking her head. The threat hung in the air like smoke. A new siren approached, this one different. Longer, deeper notes. A large black SUV pulled up outside, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. Sheriff Dale Cotton stepped out, his brass star catching the light as he adjusted his gun belt. The sheriff was tall and lean, with iron-gray hair and eyes like chips of blue ice. He moved with the easy confidence of a man used to absolute authority in his domain. The other officers straightened as he entered, while McAllister's face showed relief. Cotton surveyed the scene with practiced efficiency. The phones still recording, the upset civilians, Darius on his knees, and the barely contained fury on Malik's face. His expression gave nothing away. "Clear the diner," he ordered. When no one moved immediately, he added, "Now, or we start collecting phones and witnesses for obstruction." The threat worked. People began filing out, though many lingered just outside the windows, still trying to record. The retired Marine was the last to leave, shooting Darius a look of apology. "Sheriff," Tasha stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "My husband was defending our son from harassment. He's a decorated veteran." "Ma'am," Cotton cut her off, his tone professionally sympathetic but firm. "I understand you're upset, but assaulting an officer is a serious offense, regardless of military service. We'll sort this out at the station." He turned to McAllister. "Transport him to the County Force substation." "No booking yet. I want to handle this carefully." Malik caught the undertone in those words. "Mom," he whispered, "they can't just—" "Quiet," Tasha breathed, squeezing his arm harder. She'd heard it too. Two officers hauled Darius to his feet. He stood straight-backed, dignity intact despite the handcuffs. "Tasha," he said calmly, "call Jackson at the firm. He'll know what to do." "Enough talk," McAllister snapped, shoving Darius toward the door. "I want to know where you're taking him," Tasha demanded. "I have a right—" "You have the right to leave this diner before I find a reason to arrest you too," Cotton replied mildly. "Take your boy home, ma'am. We'll contact you when appropriate." They watched helplessly as Darius was led out to a patrol car. The morning sun seemed to mock the scene with its cheerfulness, glinting off the handcuffs and the sheriff's star with the same indifferent brightness. Cotton followed them out, but paused beside McAllister in the parking lot. The two men stood close, their voices low and private. "County 4 is off the main grid," Cotton murmured. "No cameras, no records. Keep him there until I say different." His cold eyes tracked Darius being placed in the back of the patrol car. "We bury this deep. He doesn't walk out unless I give the word." "Understood?" McAllister nodded, a mean smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Yes, sir. Understood completely." The patrol car pulled away, carrying Darius toward the remote substation. Inside the diner, Tasha held Malik close, her teacher's mind already planning, calculating, remembering every detail. She watched the sheriff's black SUV follow the patrol car, both vehicles disappearing around a bend in the road. The motel room's ancient air conditioner rattled and wheezed, barely cutting through the thick Georgia heat. Tasha sat on the edge of the sagging bed, her phone pressed to her ear, listening to yet another endless ring. Beside her, Malik paced the worn carpet, his footsteps making the same six-step pattern over and over. "Nothing?" he asked as she lowered the phone. Tasha shook her head. "That's the fifth law firm. Not even voicemail." Her voice cracked slightly. "Something's wrong. They can't all be closed on a Sunday evening." Malik's fists clenched. They're blocking us, just like Dad's friend Jackson. His number won't even connect anymore. The cheap digital clock on the nightstand blinked 7:43 p.m. in harsh red numbers. They'd been at this for hours, watching the sun sink, while their desperation rose. Empty coffee cups and untouched sandwich wrappers littered the small table by the window. "Try the ACLU again," Malik suggested, running his hands through his hair. A nervous gesture that reminded Tasha so much of Darius, it made her chest ache. "I did, 20 minutes ago. Same thing. Rings forever, then drops." Tasha stood up, her teacher's instincts kicking in despite her exhaustion. "Sit down, baby. You're wearing yourself out." "I can't sit," Malik's voice rose. "They've had Dad for 12 hours. No phone call, no lawyer, nothing. We don't even know where this County 4 place is. It's not on any map." A sharp knock at their door made them both jump. "Management!" a voice called out. Tasha opened the door to find Mr. Peters, the motel manager who'd checked them in that morning. His previously professional demeanor had vanished, replaced by barely concealed hostility. "Is there a problem?" Tasha asked, keeping her voice steady. "Several complaints about noise," Peters said, though the rooms on either side of theirs were empty. "And there's an issue with your credit card." "What issue?" "We paid for 3 nights. Cards showing declined now." Peters crossed his arms. "We'll need cash, or you'll have to leave." Malik stepped forward. "That's impossible. Our card is fine." "Don't take that tone with me, boy," Peters snapped, making Malik flinch at the echo of McAllister's words from that morning. Tasha felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. This wasn't coincidence. "We'll find somewhere else," she said quietly. "Good idea." Peters's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You have 30 minutes to clear out." The door closed with unnecessary force. Tasha leaned against it, closing her eyes briefly. "Pack up, Malik, quickly." "Mom, this is crazy. They can't just—" "They can, and they are." Tasha moved to gather their things. "The sheriff has more power here than we realized. He's making sure we can't stay, can't get help." They packed in tense silence, jumping at every sound from outside. Tasha tried their credit card at 3 other motels in town, all suddenly full, despite their vacant parking lots. The sun had fully set now, leaving them standing in a gas station parking lot, their SUV idling. "What do we do?" Malik's voice was small, younger than his 17 years. Before Tasha could answer, a gentle tap on her window made them both startle. A black woman in her 50s stood there, her expression kind but cautious. She held up both hands to show she meant no harm. Tasha lowered the window slightly. "Yes? I'm Jada Freeman. I own the Freedom Cup Cafe downtown." The woman's voice was low and steady. "I saw what happened at Mamie's this morning. Been looking for you folks." Tasha's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Why?" "Because I recognized your husband." Jada glanced around the parking lot before continuing. "I was at a veterans event last year where he spoke about security consulting. But more importantly, I know what Cotton and his boys are doing to you right now. The blocked calls, the credit cards, the sudden no vacancy signs." Some of the tension left Tasha's shoulders. Here, finally, was someone who understood. "I've got hot food in my car," Jada continued, "and a safe place where you can stay tonight. Somewhere they won't think to look." "Why help us?" Malik asked, leaning forward. "Won't you get in trouble?" A fierce smile crossed Jada's face. "Honey, I've been documenting Cotton's abuse for 3 years. Your daddy's case might be exactly what we need to bring it all down." She stepped back, gesturing to her car. "Follow me. Food's getting cold, and we've got a lot to talk about." Tasha studied the woman's face, reading the sincerity there, the quiet strength. After hours of doors closing in their faces, here was one opening wide. "Lead the way," Tasha said, starting the engine. Jada nodded once, understanding all that wasn't said. As they pulled out of the parking lot, following her sensible sedan through the darkening streets, Tasha felt the first stirring of hope since that morning. They weren't alone anymore. And hope, she knew from experience, could be the most powerful weapon of all. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Jada's apartment above her cafe, casting warm stripes across a table covered in manila folders and newspaper clippings. The smell of fresh coffee and biscuits wafted up from the kitchen below. 3 years of documented incidents, Jada explained, spreading out the papers. Traffic stops that turned violent, mysterious overnight jail stays, people losing jobs after filing complaints. She tapped a particularly thick folder, all involving Sheriff Cotton or his deputies. Tasha picked up a photograph showing a young black man with a badly bruised face. Why hasn't anyone stopped this? Cotton's got connections. Jada poured more coffee into their mugs. State politicians, judges, business owners, they're all tangled up in his web. Anyone who speaks up finds themselves facing trumped-up charges or worse. Malik, who'd been quiet all morning, leaned forward. But you kept collecting evidence anyway? Someone has to. Jada's voice was firm. I started after they roughed up my nephew during a traffic stop, planted drugs in his car, tried to give him 10 years. We got lucky, had video proving the officer placed the evidence, but the footage disappeared from evidence, and the department cleared themselves of wrongdoing. She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to Tasha. Speaking of footage, this is from yesterday. The video was grainy, shot from across the diner. Even with the poor quality, the scene was clear. McAllister grabbing Malik, Darius's controlled response, the ID falling. Most importantly, it showed McAllister ignoring Darius's credentials and escalating the situation. This is exactly what we need, Tasha said, her teacher's voice steady despite her racing heart. But we'll need a lawyer who won't back down when Cotton applies pressure. What about Cousin Marcus? Malik suggested. He handles civil rights cases in Atlanta. Marcus Turner? Tasha was already pulling out her phone. He's far enough away that Cotton can't touch him easily. She dialed, holding her breath through each ring. Unlike yesterday's calls, this one connected. Cousin Marcus, it's Tasha Samuels. She took a deep breath. We need your help. Darius has been arrested. She explained the situation while Jada and Malik listened. Marcus's responses grew increasingly concerned. They're holding him without charges? Marcus's voice was sharp enough that Tasha had put him on speaker. That's illegal. They have to either charge him or release him within 48 hours. Sheriff Cotton's keeping it off the books, Jada cut in. I'm Jada Freeman. I've been documenting similar cases. Ms. Freeman, I've heard about your work. Marcus's tone shifted to professional interest. If you have evidence of a pattern, combined with this new footage, we could build something significant. But first, we need to get Darius out. Can you help? Tasha asked. I'll take the case, but I need to file emergency motions in Atlanta first. If you can get to the jail, try to see him. Establish that they're denying access. Document everything. They ended the call, and Jada immediately stood. I'll drive. They know my car, but they're used to seeing me around. Less suspicious than your SUV. The county jail sat on the outskirts of town, a squat brick building surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The parking lot was nearly empty when they arrived, just a few patrol cars and a prisoner transport van. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as they approached the front desk. A deputy looked up lazily, his expression changing to recognition when he saw Jada. We're here to visit Darius Samuels, Tasha said firmly. The deputy picked up his phone without breaking eye contact. A moment later, heavy footsteps approached from the corridor. Sheriff Cotton emerged, his badge gleaming under the harsh lights. He wore the same cold smile he'd had at the diner. "Mrs. Samuels," he drawled. "I'm afraid your husband isn't available for visitors. He has the right to see his family," Tasha countered. "Not while he's under investigation." Cotton's smile didn't waver. "No visitors. Investigation for what?" Malik stepped forward, fists clenched at his sides. "You haven't even charged him with anything." Cotton's gaze shifted to Malik, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "Boy, you do well to mind your tone in my jail." Tasha placed a steadying hand on Malik's shoulder, feeling the tension vibrating through him. Jada moved closer, her presence a silent support. "We have a lawyer," Tasha said evenly. "He'll be filing motions today." "File whatever you like." Cotton spread his hands. "But right now, Mr. Samuels is unavailable. No visitors." Malik's fists tightened further, his knuckles white with restraint. Tasha squeezed his shoulder, knowing they'd gotten what they came for. Proof of Cotton's obstruction. But standing there, watching the sheriff's smug satisfaction, knowing Darius was somewhere in this building, unable to reach him, it took every ounce of her self-control not to scream. The cell was 8 feet by 10. Darius knew because he'd measured it in careful heel-to-toe steps during his first hour there. No windows, just a narrow slot in the metal door that let in strips of fluorescent light from the corridor. The air smelled of bleach and old concrete. He sat cross-legged on the thin mattress, back straight, hands resting loosely on his knees. To anyone watching through the security camera mounted in the corner, he looked defeated, compliant, exactly what they wanted to see. But Darius's mind was working, processing, analyzing, just like they'd taught him in SEAL training, just like he'd practiced during POW simulations. Every sound, every pattern, every detail mattered. Tap, tap, tap. Heavy boots, male guard, favoring his left leg. Probably the one who'd brought lunch, turkey sandwich, no mayo, like they were doing him a favor. 312 steps from the main security door to his cell, with 2 checkpoint gates in between. Click. Whir. The camera in the corner adjusted slightly. It swept left to right every 47 seconds, with a 3-second pause at each end. The housing was loose, probably from years of humidity and neglect. A small detail, but details kept you alive. Darius closed his eyes, appearing to meditate. In reality, he was building a mental map. The guard rotation changed every 8 hours. 3 different walk patterns. The limping guard who kept strict time, the younger one who dawdled near the cells, and the night shift guy who wore squeaky boots and whistled country songs. The ventilation system kicked in with a rattle. Darius counted. 17 seconds of noise. Perfect cover for any small movements. He'd noticed the loose wire in his bed frame during his first careful inspection. 6 inches of thin metal, barely visible unless you knew where to look. When the vents hummed again, Darius shifted position. To the camera, it looked like simple stretching. But his fingers worked quickly, extracting the wire with practiced precision. He kept it hidden against his palm as he resumed his cross-legged pose. Squeak, squeak. Night shift was starting early. Darius waited through 3 camera sweeps, timing his movements with the ventilation noise. The wire, bent just so, would create a subtle distortion in the camera's field of view. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to give him blind spots if he needed them. He thought of Tasha and Malik, pictured their faces in the diner, the fear in their eyes when McAllister had grabbed Malik, the fury when Cotton had ordered Darius into custody. The memory made his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Cameras were always watching. Tap, shuffle, tap. New footsteps, unfamiliar rhythm. Darius's senses sharpened. The steps paused outside his door. Keys jingled, but the door didn't open. "Chow time!" a voice called, quiet but clear. Military cadence in those words, not local law enforcement. Darius didn't move. The food slot opened with a metallic scrape. A tray appeared, sliding through with precise movement. Professional, controlled. "Roger that," Darius responded, matching the tone. "A test, maybe. Or a message." The guard's shadow shifted. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I know who you are." Darius remained still, every nerve alert. The guard continued, words measured and deliberate. "3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, Afghanistan, '09. We heard about you there." A long pause. Darius could hear other guards chatting far down the corridor. The camera whirred through another sweep. "Don't give up," the guard murmured. "Some of us are still watching." The food slot closed with a soft click. The footsteps retreated, measured and steady. Darius listened until they faded completely, his mind already processing this new information. Not all allies wore obvious uniforms. He picked up the tray, noting how the sandwich was placed. Slightly off-center, covering something. A folded scrap of paper, barely larger than a fortune cookie slip. He palmed it smoothly, using his body to block the camera's view. The ventilation kicked in again. 17 seconds of cover. Darius used 12 of them to secure the wire in place, creating a subtle blur in the camera's sweep. The remaining 5 seconds were enough to slip the paper into a small tear he'd made in the mattress seam. Night was falling outside, not that he could see it, but he could feel it in the changing rhythms of the jail, the subtle shift in guard patterns. In his cell, Darius maintained his pose of meditation. To anyone watching, he was a man resigned to his situation. They didn't need to know about the wire, or the paper, or the precise map he'd built in his mind. They didn't need to know that every apparent sign of submission was actually a calculation. That's what they'd taught him in the SEALs. The best position is the one your enemy doesn't know you're taking. The night guard's squeaky boots approached, right on schedule. Darius counted the steps, added them to his mental blueprint. In the corner, the camera swept back and forth, its view now slightly distorted in ways only he would notice. He waited, patient and alert, while the jail settled into its nighttime routine. Judda's cafe was closed for the night, but light still spilled from its windows onto the empty street. Inside, she sat at a corner table with Tasha and Malik, her laptop open between them. The video from the diner played on the screen, grainy but clear enough to show what happened. "Are you sure about this?" Tasha asked, her hands wrapped tight around a cooling mug of tea. "What if they retaliate?" Jada's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "They're already retaliating. Keeping Darius locked up without charges? That's their retaliation. But they can't hide from this." Malik leaned forward, his face lit by the screen's glow. "Do it, Ms. Freeman. People need to see what really happened." The video showed everything. McAllister's aggressive approach, his hand grabbing Malik, Darius's controlled response. Most importantly, it captured the moment when Darius's ID fell, when the diner patrons realized who he was. Jada took a deep breath and clicked Upload. The progress bar filled slowly. Rural Georgia internet wasn't known for its speed. When it finished, she shared it to every platform she could think of. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. "Now we wait," she said. But they didn't have to wait long. Within the first hour, the video had thousands of views. Comments flooded in. "Did that cop just try to assault a Navy SEAL's son? Look how calm the father stayed. That's training right there. Where is he now? Someone find out what happened." Tasha's phone started buzzing. Text messages from friends, then calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Jada's cafe phone rang, a reporter from Atlanta wanting details. "It's working," Malik said, scrolling through his phone. "People are sharing it everywhere." Free Darius is starting to trend. Jada's laptop chimed with email notifications. Media requests poured in, local news, national networks, online publications. They all wanted the same thing, an interview with the family. "We need to be smart about this," Jada said, sorting through the messages. "Pick the right outlet. Tell the story right." She paused on one email. "Here, this producer from News 1. They've covered police misconduct before. Did good work with it." Tasha read the email over her shoulder. The producer wanted to do a live interview via Zoom, prime time slot. They'd show the video, let Tasha tell their story. "I'll do it," Tasha said. Her voice was steady now, anger replacing fear. They need to know who they're messing with. They spent the next hours preparing. Jada helped Tasha practice what to say, how to stay focused on the facts. Malik found photos of his father in uniform, images from award ceremonies that the public needed to see. The interview was set for 9 p.m. They used Jada's office, making sure the backdrop looked professional. Tasha sat straight-backed in front of the laptop, wearing her best blazer. Under the desk, her hands were shaking, but her face showed nothing but determination. The host's face appeared on screen. "We're here with Tasha Samuels, wife of former Navy SEAL Darius Samuels, who was arrested yesterday in what appears to be a racially motivated incident. Mrs. Samuels, can you tell us what happened?" Tasha told the story clearly, just as they'd practiced. When she described McAllister grabbing Malik, her voice didn't waver. When she explained how Darius defended their son, she emphasized his control, his professionalism. "And your husband's military background," the host prompted. This was the moment they'd planned for. Tasha nodded to Malik, who sent the files to the producer. Images filled the screen. Darius in dress uniform, receiving honors. Darius shaking hands with two different presidents. Darius with his SEAL team, faces blurred for security. "My husband served this country for 20 years, Tasha said. "He received the Silver Star for valor in combat. He trained other SEALs in advanced tactical response. And now he's being held without charges because he protected our son from police harassment." Social media exploded. Viewers shared the interview in real time. New hashtags emerged. "On SEAL Justice," "Junt Veterans Persecuted," "Antius Free Darius Now." The viewer count climbed past 100,000, then 500,000. In Jada's office, they watched the numbers grow. Messages of support flooded in from veterans groups, civil rights organizations, military families. The story was spreading faster than anyone could control. "Look," Malik said, showing them his phone. Their small town was trending nationally. People were asking questions about Sheriff Cotton, about McAllister's record, about the history of police conduct in the area. Tasha stared at the screen, watching the view count rise, watching their private injustice become a public outcry. In her mind, she pictured Darius in his cell, not knowing any of this was happening. Not yet. The host's voice brought her attention back to the interview. "Mrs. Samuels, what do you want people to know about your husband?" Tasha looked directly into the camera. Behind her, Jada and Malik stood like sentinels, their faces set with shared purpose. The world was watching now. The truth was out. There was no going back. Sheriff Dale Cotton stood in his office, watching the interview replay on his computer screen. His face was tight, jaw clenched. Behind him, Officer McAllister paced like a caged animal. 500,000 views, Cotton muttered, clicking through social media posts. And climbing. He slammed his laptop shut. This ends now. 20 minutes later, Cotton's cruiser pulled up in front of Jada's cafe. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty street. He adjusted his badge, making sure it caught the light just right. Inside, Jada was setting up for the breakfast rush. She looked up when the bell chimed, her expression hardening when she saw who it was. "We're not open yet, Sheriff." Cotton smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked slowly around the cafe, running his finger along a table surface. "Nice place you got here, Ms. Freeman. Be a shame if the health department found some violations." Jada continued wiping down the counter, her movements deliberate. "Everything's up to code, just passed inspection last month. Inspections can be unpredictable." Cotton leaned against the counter. "Like those property taxes you're behind on." "I'm not behind on anything," Jada said, but her hand tightened on the cleaning cloth. "Records can be confusing." Cotton's voice was soft, almost friendly. "Sometimes payments get lost. Computer errors happen, especially when business owners start causing trouble." Jada put down the cloth and faced him directly. "Are you threatening me, Sheriff?" "Just having a friendly chat about civic responsibility." He pulled out his phone, showed her a screen full of her social media posts. "Seems like you've been spreading some misleading information." "You mean the truth?" Jada's voice was steady, but her heart hammered. "That video shows exactly what happened." "Speaking of videos," Cotton said, "Officer McAllister's body cam tells a different story. It's being released to the media right now." As if on cue, Jada's phone buzzed. A local news site had posted a new video, grainy body cam footage showing Darius appearing to lunge at McAllister. The angles were odd, the audio scratchy. "That's not what happened," Jada said. "Anyone who was there knows it. It's official police evidence." Cotton straightened up, adjusting his belt. "Unlike some shaky cell phone video taken by troublemakers." Outside, a news van pulled up. Cotton smiled again. "Looks like they want your comment on the new footage. Choose your words carefully, Ms. Freeman. Businesses need community support to survive." He walked out just as reporters started setting up their cameras. Jada's phone buzzed again. Messages from people who'd been at the diner, pointing out problems with McAllister's video. "The lighting's wrong. Where's the sound of the coffee maker? That's not even the right table layout." Jada started screenshotting the messages, documenting everything. Her hands shook, but her resolve strengthened. She'd seen too many people bullied into silence. Across town, in a small office building, two men in suits checked into a hotel under bland, forgettable names. Their credentials, carefully tucked away, identified them as FBI agents. They'd driven unmarked cars from Atlanta, arriving separately to avoid attention. The younger agent unpacked his laptop, connecting to a secure network. "Local chatter's picking up. Sheriff's Department is trying to control the narrative." His partner, older and grayer, nodded. "DOJ's Civil Rights Division wants this handled quietly for now. We observe, we document, we build the case." They pulled up McAllister's personnel file, complaints buried, witnesses pressured, patterns emerging. The younger agent whistled softly. 15 years of this, all swept under the rug. "Not anymore," his partner said, adding another document to their growing file. "Get the forensics team ready for the body cam footage. We'll need to prove tampering." In his cell, Darius sat cross-legged on his bunk, eyes closed but senses alert. He'd counted 3 new sets of footsteps in the corridor. Different rhythm, different weight distribution than the usual guards. The friendly guard passed by, doing his rounds. A folded note slipped under Darius's door with his lunch tray. Darius waited until the footsteps faded before retrieving it. The message was brief. "They're here. Be ready." He allowed himself a small smile, then ate his lunch slowly, methodically. Years of training had taught him patience. The time would come. For now, he waited, listening to the changing patterns of movement outside his cell, feeling the shift in the air. The note he shredded into tiny pieces, mixing them with his food waste. No evidence, no traces, just like they'd taught him in SEAL training. Everything had its time, its purpose. Even being in this cell was part of a larger strategy now, one that was finally coming together. Sheriff Cotton burst through the jail's security doors, his face flushed red with anger. He jabbed his finger at the control panel, punching in the emergency lockdown code. "Nobody in or out," he barked at the deputies. "I want all exterior doors sealed. No visitors, no lawyers, no press." He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he dialed. "Get the transport van ready. We're moving the seal." Alarms blared through the corridors. Heavy metal doors slammed shut, with echoing finality. Guards rushed to their positions, radios crackling with confused chatter. In his cell, Darius sat perfectly still, counting the irregular footsteps echoing down the hallway. 3 guards running east, 2 more heading to the main entrance, a set of heavier boots, Cotton himself, pacing near the control room. Something had spooked them. Darius closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing. He'd seen this pattern before, in hostile territories when an operation was about to go sideways. The sudden surge of activity, the poorly concealed panic. They were trying to move him. The friendly guard, Johnson, according to his nameplate, appeared at his cell, pretending to do a routine check. His eyes met Darius's for a fraction of a second. "Medical check in 10 minutes, Johnson announced loudly for the benefit of the cameras. Then, barely a whisper, "Feds at the front gate. Cotton's trying to get you out the back." Darius gave an imperceptible nod. His muscles tensed, ready. He'd mapped every corner of this place, memorized every guard rotation. Now it was time to use that knowledge. 5 minutes later, Darius started his performance. He stumbled to his feet, swaying dramatically. His breakfast tray clattered to the floor. He pressed one hand against the wall, letting his knees buckle. "Help!" Johnson called out, right on cue. "Prisoner down!" The response was immediate. 2 deputies rushed to the cell, followed by Cotton himself. They found Darius on the floor, breathing heavily, clutching his chest. "Get him to the infirmary," Cotton ordered, "and keep it quiet. Last thing we need is more attention." They cuffed Darius before helping him up. Johnson and another deputy supported him between them, half dragging him toward the infirmary. Cotton followed close behind, barking orders into his radio. They passed through 2 security checkpoints. Darius kept his head down, counting steps. 20 paces to the next corner, 15 to the infirmary door, 10 to the security panel that controlled the east wing. Just before they reached the infirmary, Darius made his move. He straightened suddenly, driving his elbow back with surgical precision. It caught the second deputy just below the sternum, dropping him instantly. Before Cotton could react, Darius spun, still cuffed, using Johnson as a shield. "The panel!" Darius commanded. Johnson didn't hesitate. He slammed his hand on the emergency override, inputting a code that unlocked the entire east wing. Alarms screamed through the building. Cotton reached for his weapon, but Darius was faster. Even with his hands cuffed, he executed a perfect sweep kick, sending the sheriff sprawling. Cotton's head cracked against the wall, leaving him dazed. "Federal agents!" The shout echoed through the corridors. Heavy boots thundered on concrete. The FBI team moved in with practiced efficiency, weapons drawn. "Clear! Clear! Suspect secured!" They found Darius standing calmly by the security panel, Johnson beside him with hands raised. Cotton lay groaning on the floor, his weapon kicked well out of reach. "Special Agent Marcus," the lead agent introduced himself, showing his badge. "We've been looking for you, Mr. Samuels." "Took your time," Darius replied evenly. The agents secured the scene quickly, photographing everything. One of them checked Cotton for injuries, while another radioed for backup. Through the windows, camera flashes started popping. The media had arrived. "Ready to walk out of here?" Marcus asked, producing a key for the handcuffs. Darius shook his head. "Leave them on. Let them see exactly how they've been holding me." Marcus nodded, understanding. They walked together through the jail's main entrance, Darius still in cuffs, flanked by federal agents. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. Reporters shouted questions. The morning sun felt warm on Darius's face. Behind them, more agents led out a handcuffed Sheriff Cotton, his face twisted with impotent rage. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and the cameras caught every second of it. Johnson watched from the doorway, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Sometimes justice needed a little help finding its way. Through the crowd, Darius spotted Tasha and Malik pushing forward, their faces a mix of relief and triumph. But he kept his expression neutral, his posture straight. He'd been trained to maintain composure in any situation, and this moment deserved that same discipline. The media frenzy intensified as they approached the FBI vehicles. Questions overlapped. "Mr. Samuels, how long were you held without charges? Did they deny you legal representation? What about Officer McAllister's body cam footage?" Darius kept walking, head high, letting the handcuffs tell their own story. Every camera captured the image. A decorated Navy SEAL, illegally detained, emerging with dignity intact, while his captors faced justice. The hotel room television flickered with breaking news graphics. Malik sat on the edge of the bed, gripping his mother's hand, as they watched Darius approach the podium. Camera flashes erupted like lightning, illuminating his father's face. Darius wore his navy dress blues, ribbons and medals gleaming under the harsh lights. The sight made Malik's chest tighten with pride and pain. His father looked exactly like what he was, a hero who'd been treated like a criminal. "He looks so strong," Tasha whispered, wiping tears from her cheeks. "After everything they did." The room fell silent as Darius adjusted the microphone. His expression remained composed, but Malik recognized the fire in his eyes, the same quiet intensity he'd shown that morning at the diner. "Good afternoon," Darius began, his voice steady and clear. "My name is Senior Chief Petty Officer Darius Samuels, United States Navy, retired. I've served this country through 4 combat deployments. I've bled for it. I've watched brothers die for it." He paused, letting the words settle. "And last week, I was illegally detained in my own country for protecting my son from racial harassment." Cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters leaned forward, pens poised. "They didn't break me," Darius continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "But they've been breaking people like me forever." Malik felt tears rolling down his face. He remembered the helplessness of watching his father being handcuffed, the rage when they couldn't visit him, the fear of not knowing if he was safe. "For 3 days, they held me without charges," Darius said. "No phone call, no lawyer, just a cell and threats, and the assumption that I would break." His voice remained measured, but carried steel underneath. Sheriff Cotton and Officer McAllister thought their badges made them untouchable. They thought they could bury one more incident, silence one more voice, break one more black man. The camera panned to show Jada Freeman standing at the back of the room, nodding slowly. Other community members flanked her, their faces reflecting years of similar experiences. "But they made a mistake," Darius continued. "They assumed I would stay quiet to protect myself. They assumed I would take a settlement and disappear." He shook his head. "That's not what I was trained to do. That's not what I taught my son to do." Tasha squeezed Malik's hand harder. On screen, their family attorney stepped forward, holding up a thick document. "Today, I'm announcing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Sheriff's Office, Oakwood County, and Officer Brent McAllister," Darius declared. "Not just for what they did to me, but for every person they've silenced, every illegal search, every false arrest, every threat, and every cover-up. The room erupted with questions. Reporters shouted over each other, but Darius raised his hand for silence. "We have evidence," he continued. "Witness statements, internal documents, body camera footage that was conveniently lost, and brave citizens like Jada Freeman who've been documenting these abuses for years." The camera showed McAllister's lawyer in the back, furiously typing on his phone. Sheriff Cotton was conspicuously absent, still in federal custody. "They offered me money to stay quiet," Darius revealed. "A generous settlement, they called it. But I didn't serve this country to watch its principals die in small-town jail cells. I didn't raise my son to accept injustice because fighting it might be uncomfortable." Malik straightened his shoulders, recognizing his father's words from countless dinner-table discussions about right and wrong, courage and compromise. "This lawsuit isn't about money," Darius emphasized. "It's about accountability. It's about making sure that no other father has to watch his son being harassed by those sworn to protect him. No other family has to wonder if their loved one is being beaten in a cell where cameras don't work." In the hotel room, Tasha stood up, pacing with nervous energy. "They're going to come after us hard for this," she said softly. "Let them," Malik replied, his voice stronger than he expected. "Dad's right. We can't stay quiet." On screen, Darius continued laying out the lawsuit's details. The allegations spanned years: racial profiling, evidence tampering, coordinated harassment of minority-owned businesses. Each point landed like a hammer blow against the wall of silence that had protected Cotton and his deputies. "To those who've suffered in silence," Darius said, "I hear you. To those who thought they were alone against this system, you're not anymore. And to those who abuse their authority, thinking no one will stand up to them," he paused, his expression hardening. "You picked the wrong family to intimidate." The attorney stepped forward to handle questions, but the cameras stayed on Darius. He stood tall, unmoved by the chaos of shouting reporters and flashing cameras. This was just the beginning of a different kind of battle, and he was prepared for a long campaign. "Look at him," Malik whispered. "They really thought they could break him." Tasha smiled through her tears. "They don't know your father. They never did." The setting sun cast long shadows across Main Street as Jada Freeman locked up her cafe for the night. She paused, noticing fresh spray paint marring her front window, racial slurs in angry red letters. Her hands trembled as she took photos with her phone, documenting one more act of intimidation. Inside, overturned chairs and broken dishes littered the floor. Earlier that day, a group of customers had started a fight, clearly staged to cause damage. The police had taken hours to respond, and when they did, they'd barely taken notes. Across town, Malik walked home from the library, his backpack heavy with engineering textbooks. The streetlights flickered, creating pools of dim yellow light. He'd stayed late studying, trying to keep his grades up despite everything happening. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Don't let them steal your future." Movement caught his eye, shadows detaching from a darkened doorway. 3 white teenagers emerged, carrying baseball bats and pipes. Malik recognized one from school, Tommy Henderson, whose father was a deputy under Sheriff Cotton. "Hey, smart guy," Tommy called out, slapping the pipe against his palm. "Daddy's lawsuit causing some problems around here." Malik's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "Back off, Tommy. You don't want this trouble." "Trouble?" Another boy laughed. "Your family's the one bringing trouble. Time somebody taught you about respect." They spread out, trying to circle him. Malik dropped his backpack, settling into the defensive stance his father had drilled into him countless times. Weight on the balls of his feet. Hands up. Stay mobile. The first swing came fast, a wild pipe strike from the left. Malik slipped past it, driving his elbow into the attacker's ribs just like he'd practiced. The boy dropped, wheezing, but Tommy was already moving in, bat raised high. Pain exploded across Malik's shoulder as the bat connected. He stumbled, but didn't fall. The third attacker rushed him with a pipe. Malik caught the weapon, yanking it forward while stepping aside. The momentum sent his attacker sprawling. "Stay down!" Tommy shouted, swinging again. This time the bat caught Malik's temple. Blood trickled into his eye. The world tilted sideways, but Darius had taught him more than just fighting moves. He'd taught him about fear, about pushing through pain, about never letting bullies win. Malik surged forward, tackling Tommy around the waist. They crashed to the pavement together. Malik landed 2 solid punches before something metal slammed into his back. Stars burst behind his eyes. He rolled away, trying to protect his head as kicks and blows rained down. A car horn blared. Headlights swept the street. The attackers scattered, leaving Malik curled on the sidewalk, his mouth filled with copper taste of blood. "Oh my God, Malik!" It was Jada's voice. Car doors slammed. Footsteps rushed toward him. "I got 2 of them," Malik mumbled, as gentle hands helped him sit up. "Dad would be proud." "Don't talk, honey." Jada pressed a cloth to his bleeding head. "I'm calling an ambulance." "And your parents." The emergency room lights were harsh and white. Doctors spoke in low voices about concussion protocols and X-rays. Malik drifted in and out, catching fragments of conversation. Multiple contusions. Defensive wounds on his hands. Lucky nothing's broken. He fully woke to find his father sitting beside the hospital bed, holding his hand. Darius's face was carved from stone, but his eyes held a storm. "This isn't your fault," Darius said quietly. "It's theirs. But now, we do this our way." Malik tried to nod, wincing at the movement. "I remembered what you taught me. About stance, about leverage. You did good, son." Darius squeezed his hand. 2 against 3 with weapons. You held your own, but you shouldn't have had to. Outside the room, they could hear Tasha talking with police officers. Her voice was controlled but sharp, cutting through excuses about "he said," "she said," and "boys will be boys." "They hit Jada's place too," Malik said. "Before they found me. Trashed it." Darius's jaw tightened. "I know. She called us right after she found you. She's got security footage this time. Clear shots of their faces." "Tommy Henderson was there," Malik said. "Deputy Henderson's son. He said the lawsuit was causing problems. They think violence will make us back down." Darius shook his head slowly. They still don't understand who they're dealing with. A nurse entered with more painkillers, checking Malik's vitals. The medicine made the room fuzzy around the edges, but he fought to stay alert. "Dad?" he whispered. "Are we doing the right thing? With the lawsuit? People are getting hurt." "People were already getting hurt," Darius replied. "They just didn't have anyone standing up for them. Sometimes doing right means walking through fire. But we walked together." Malik closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of his father's hand anchoring him. The pain throbbed in waves, but underneath it was something stronger. Pride, determination, and the unshakable knowledge that they wouldn't break. Sheriff Dale Cotton paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. The walls were closing in. His carefully built empire of control was crumbling, and he knew it. Outside his window, a gathering crowd of concerned citizens, all white, all angry, waved signs denouncing Darius Samuels as a dangerous radical. "Make sure they stay visible," Cotton barked into the phone. "I want news cameras seeing real Americans standing up against this troublemaker." He adjusted his tie in the window's reflection, practicing his concerned public servant face. Deputy Henderson stood in the doorway, sweating. "Sheriff, my boy Tommy." He says he wasn't anywhere near that Samuels kid. But there's video. Handle your family business, Cotton snapped. I've got bigger problems than your idiot son right now. He grabbed his jacket, checking his appearance one more time. Time to feed the media machine. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters. Cotton descended like a benevolent king. All practiced charm and measured concern. Camera lights flashed as he approached the microphone. "Good people of our community," he began, voice dripping honey, "we're facing troubled times. Outside agitators like Darius Samuels want to paint us as backwards, as racist. But we know the truth about our town." The hired protesters cheered on cue. Signs bobbed in the morning sun. "Support our police," and "Samuels Frauenvries race baiter." Inside the FBI surveillance van, parked 2 blocks away, Agent Sarah Chen adjusted her headphones. Cotton's wireless microphone was picking up everything, including what he muttered between sentences. "Keep waving those signs, you dumb hicks," he whispered, smiling for the cameras. "Earn your pay." Chen's partner, Agent Marcus Rodriguez, typed rapidly, logging every word. They'd been building this case for weeks, gathering threads that led straight to Cotton's door. Corruption, conspiracy, civil rights violations stretching back decades. Cotton's voice crackled through their speakers again as he stepped away from the podium, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, it's handled. Got these sheep eating out of my hand. Now about that seal problem." Chen and Rodriguez leaned forward, recording devices humming. "Listen carefully," Cotton continued, ducking behind a pillar. "I don't care how you do it. We'll make that troublemaker disappear, just like the others. I've got connections up north who can—" Rodriguez hit a button, transmitting the feed directly to the field office. "We got it. That's conspiracy to commit murder on top of everything else." Chen was already radioing tactical teams. "All units, execute now. Subject is on courthouse steps. Be advised, he's armed." Cotton was mid-sentence when the first FBI vehicles screamed around the corner, lights flashing. His hired protesters scattered like leaves in a storm. He reached for his gun, but froze as agents materialized from every direction, weapons drawn. "Dale Cotton," Chen announced through a megaphone, "you're under arrest for civil rights violations, conspiracy to commit murder, and corruption under color of authority. Put your hands where we can see them." The crowd fell silent. Phone cameras recorded as Cotton slowly raised his hands, his mask of authority cracking. Local officers backed away, not wanting to be caught in the federal net. "This is a mistake," Cotton tried to say, but his voice shook. "I'm the law here. You can't—" "The law?" Rodriguez clicked the handcuffs tight. "Let's play your greatest hits." He held up a phone, playing Cotton's recorded threat. The racial slur echoed across the suddenly silent square. Across town, Officer McAllister was filling his patrol car with gas when the alert hit his phone. He watched the live stream of Cotton's arrest, face draining of color. His credit card was still in the reader when he saw FBI vehicles turning onto the highway. He jumped in his car, tires squealing as he peeled out of the gas station. The cashier watched him go, then called the FBI tip line they'd been advertising all week. "Yeah, that cop you're looking for? Just saw him heading west on Highway 20. Driving a blue Dodge Ram, personal vehicle. Looked real nervous." 2 hours later, at a truck stop just across the state line, McAllister was ordering coffee when tactical teams surrounded the building. He tried to run, but made it 3 steps before taking a face full of asphalt. Back in town, news helicopters circled the courthouse. Citizens gathered in knots, watching Cotton's perp walk replay on their phones. The same people who'd feared him for years now whispered and pointed as he was led to awaiting federal transport. "Never thought I'd see the day," an old black janitor said, watching from the courthouse steps he'd cleaned for 40 years. Sometimes justice takes its time, but it sure is sweet when it comes. Deputy Henderson's wife sobbed as she watched her husband being led away in cuffs too, caught in the federal sweep. Their son Tommy had already been picked up at school, facing assault charges as an adult. Agent Chen stood with Rodriguez, watching the transport pull away. 27 victims over 12 years, she said quietly. All swept under the rug, until they picked a fight with the wrong family. Speaking of family, Rodriguez checked his phone. McAllister's in custody. State troopers got him at a Flying J. He was trying to buy a bus ticket to Canada. The autumn wind caught the protesters' abandoned signs, sending them tumbling down empty streets. The Confederate flag that had hung in the diner lay crumpled in a puddle, its owner having quickly lost it when federal agents started asking questions. 6 months had transformed the small Georgia town. Where fear and silence once ruled, new voices rose. The morning sun caught the fresh paint on Jada's cafe wall, a stunning mural stretching 2 stories high. Martin Luther King Jr.'s thoughtful gaze watched over the street, surrounded by faces both historic and recent. John Lewis, Rosa Parks, and now, in a small but powerful addition, the Samuels family. Jada stood outside, wiping down tables as the morning crowd filtered in. Her cafe had become a symbol of resistance and renewal. The whites-only mindset that had haunted these streets for generations was finally cracking. "Morning, Ms." "Freeman!" called a young white officer, part of the new police force installed after the federal investigation. The old guard was gone, replaced by trained professionals who understood community policing. Inside, photographs lined the walls. Cotton in handcuffs, McAllister's mugshot, newspaper headlines documenting their fall. But more importantly, images of hope. Black and white children sharing lunch tables, community meetings where people actually listened to each other. Malik Samuels standing tall at his high school graduation. The community center buzzed with energy as teenagers filed in for today's Valor and Voice workshop. Malik stood at the podium, no longer the frightened boy from that diner. At 17, he carried himself with his father's quiet strength and his mother's fierce intelligence. "My story isn't unique," Malik began, his voice steady. "What happened to me happens every day. But what we did about it, that's what matters." He gestured to the training mats where younger kids learned self-defense, then to the computers where others studied civil rights law. In the back, Jada watched proudly. Her cafe had become the program's unofficial headquarters, a place where kids could always find safety and support. The surveillance cameras she'd installed now captured joy instead of abuse. "We don't teach hate here," Malik continued. "We teach pride, strategy, how to stand up without getting knocked down. My father showed me that strength isn't about muscles. It's about mind and heart." The audience included faces that would have been unthinkable months ago. White police cadets learning from black community leaders, former antagonists now working together for change. The town's transformation wasn't perfect, but it was real. A small girl raised her hand. "Did you feel scared? When those boys hurt you?" Malik touched the small scar on his temple, a reminder of that brutal night. "Yes," he answered honestly. "But being scared doesn't mean being weak. It means you have something worth fighting for." Outside, spring had painted the town in new colors. The courthouse, where Cotton made his last stand, now flew a Black Lives Matter flag alongside the American one. The diner where it all began had new owners, new policies, and a diverse staff serving everyone equally. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, Darius and Tasha sat on their front porch swing. Their new house, bought with part of the settlement money, stood proud on a street where black families had once been unwelcome. The rest of the money had gone to Valor and Voice, ensuring other kids would have the tools to fight back. They watched Malik in the driveway, loading boxes into his car. Stanford acceptance letter proudly displayed on the dashboard. Engineering scholarship. A future bright with possibility. "Look at him," Tasha said softly, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Remember how scared we were? That night in the motel? Not knowing if you'd come home?" Darius squeezed her hand. The memories were still sharp. The cold cell, the helpless rage, the weight of history pressing down. But they'd turned that pain into purpose. "You think it was worth it?" Tasha asked, watching their son organize his belongings with characteristic precision. Darius smiled, the expression gentle but determined. "We didn't just survive. We made them see us. That's a win." Malik approached the porch, another box in his arms. "Found Dad's old SEAL photos," he said. "Think I can hang one in my dorm?" "Only if you hang one of your speech too," Tasha insisted. "The one where you announced the scholarship program." Their laughter carried across the yard, free and unafraid. No looking over shoulders, no swallowing pride to stay safe. Just family, just joy, just the future they'd fought to create. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Down the street, children played without fear of police harassment. At the cafe, Jada was probably closing up, planning tomorrow's community meeting. In cells far from here, Cotton and McAllister faced federal charges that would keep them locked away for decades. Darius watched his son return to packing, proud of the man he'd become. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience and the fire of determination. Justice isn't something you ask for. It's something you take back, inch by inch, soul by soul. And I'm not done yet. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.